Senegal, a country marked by slavery, situated between Sahara Desert and sub-Saharan Africa, considered one of the poorest countries in the world. But when you arrive here, you redefine what poverty and wealth means. Undoubtedly, this is the most different country I have ever visited, in various aspects that I will show here. So welcome. In this video, we will travel through Senegal to understand the culture of this country, meeting new people, trying their food, visiting villages, safaris, beautiful places, but also places with a heavy history. And we are not alone. Besides me and Ita, we're traveling with Carlinhos, Senegal, and Deborah, who lived here for 8 years and know this country better than many Senegalese people. And our journey begins in Dakar.
A gente está aqui na rua de Dakar, a rua é muito movimentada, né? O Senegal tem 16 milhões de habitantes e aqui é a capital, então todo mundo vem para aqui para fazer compra, para comprar tapete, para comprar tecido. É muita gente do Senegal todo, são mais de 34 etnias, 34 povos, e é isso aqui que movimenta a economia do país.
Dakar is the largest city in Senegal, and there they have this huge monument that is the largest monument in Africa.
This monument behind me is the Monument of African Renaissance. It represents a lot of things. It's the biggest monument in the whole Africa and it's 49 meters high. As you can see, the woman is pointing behind to represent the whole history and traditions of African people. And the child is pointing ahead to represent the future. And the man is a warrior man and he also has the Muslim hat. So he represents the biggest religion here in the whole Senegal, which is Islam.
Past, present and future, all of that combined in a country with a heavy story. First, let's start with the location. Senegal is the westmost country in Africa, and they have a country inside Senegal called Gambia, which is quite different, but that's another story. Senegal is located right between the Sahara Desert and the sub-Saharan Africa. It is a beautiful country, but with a heavy past. It was the last country to stop selling enslaved people, and everything happened on Gore Island, a small island 10 minutes from Dakar.
Welcome to Gore Island. This was the largest slave trading centre in the whole of the African coast. Here, over 10 million slaves were shipped to various continents across the world. Places like Portugal, Brazil, other South American countries, and obviously in Europe.
This island is basically where the enslaved people were kept for screening, checking health and conditions before being sold and transported to other places like Brazil. Many authorities have visited this place to apologize for the past.
This place used to be the slave's house. Man, this is a very heavy environment because this is the place that they used to be traded to check the price, and even the ones that try to escape, they have a place like a prison cell only for those ones. Look at this place, for example. This is a prison cell that they used to be here in this really tiny, no light room. The light was only coming from this part of the room and this other part, and they used to be traded here.
It was more like the trading house, and these were the conditions that the people used to live in. And you just can't even imagine. It's so dark, it's so dingy, the floor is just hard and sand and concrete, and look at the window, look at the light. Imagine living in here for so long and just not knowing what your history, what's going to happen to you. It's really a tense feeling being here.
Mothers were separated from the daughters, people lost their names and become commodities. Those who tried to escape were placed in this small room where you couldn't even stand, but the most feared place was the door with no return.
This was the very last piece of land that the slaves would step on before going out and being shipped onto a completely different continent with no name, separate from their families, and just torn of their dignity. This very door here was called the door of no return. Just imagine being shipped away from your life, from your culture, from your country, working for somebody else, and not knowing what's going to happen to you.
The word Senegal comes from an expression that means we are all on the same boat, and this directly relates to their culture. Here, no one lives alone. Everyone takes care of everyone. and you see this in the way they eat.
Então, esse prato aqui se chama tchebudjen, que em Wolof significa arroz com peixe. Mas o nome não faz jus ao prato, porque ele é muito rico, né? Tem arroz, peixe, muitos legumes. Então, como é que a gente come? Esse prato aqui é para todos nós. Então, eu vou pegar a colher e eu vou imaginar aqui como se fosse uma fatia de pizza. Eu não posso invadir o do meu vizinho. Se eu gostar disso aqui, eu não posso meter a mão aqui do outro lado. Eu preciso imaginar isso aqui e ficar comendo aqui. E aí, assim, todo mundo consegue comer.
Things simply do not follow the same rules as we are accustomed to. Look at this teacher who took his students to a trip in the Gore Island and had a stick in his hand to hit them if they entered the sea. Here, this is normal. And being a Muslim country, people pray about 5 times a day. I even saw the boat captain take his hands off the wheel to pray while the boat was moving. But Senegal goes far beyond the big city of Dakar. So let's go to a small village called Sagal to show even more of this culture.
Uma coisa interessante aqui é que você vai ver que as ruas não têm asfalto, elas não são asfaltadas. E outra coisa muito interessante é que não chega correspondência. Então, você precisa ir no centro, comprar uma caixinha, um espaço nos correios e pagar mensal. Chega lá a encomenda, alguém te liga, olha, chegou a encomenda. Aí você vai até lá, porque não tem CEP, as ruas aqui não tem nome e não chega correspondência. Em casa aqui, ó, não tem, ó.
And it's interesting because even in the capital, the biggest city of Senegal, in Dakar, you don't have any address. So if you want to encomment something or if you want some friend to go to your house, you need to tell them the point of reference. So you say like, oh, I'm next to the gas station, and you go and meet them in there. That's really interesting. Like these guys, they don't have any address in the whole country.
This place is so unique that people wrap their motorcycles in bubble wrap to preserve them or put Cristiano Ronaldo's face on cookies to help with the marketing. But the most interesting thing is that here you really change your perspective of what's wealth and poverty. We visit a family near the village to see how they live. In Senegal, I changed my view of happiness. We often relate money to happiness. Of course, money is a shortcut to many things that make us happy, but we forget the most important things are free. Next to this village, there was another one where people lived together, with few things but happy.
We are here in this village. It's a tiny, tiny village where a few families live here in the middle of the nowhere here in Senegal. And you just came from this church. So there is a church here and the children, they're living from the church. I'm not a religious guy, but the experience was a really unique experience. So they live here, and there is Muslim people and Christian people, and they live all in peace. It's really good, and we're gonna see a little bit, show a little bit inside. Well, we are here inside, and as you can see, the houses, they all look like that. And it's funny that these people, they don't really need a lot of money to live, because everything that they do, it's inside the village. They have their own animals, they make their own food. The school is nearby and the church is nearby. They have their own bubble over here.
In this village, we could see people making couscous, which is a very traditional food here. The kitchen here is also very different. They do everything with wood on the ground and prepare food from scratch. And if this country hasn't impressed you yet, let's enter the home of a traditional Muslim family and see how their way of life is different from ours. We arrived just in time for prayer, and they pray 5 times a day. Before they pray, they clean all their bodies. Face, mouth, eyes, hands, arms, feet, everything. And they face Mecca and start the prayer, kneeling and standing several times. And they pray like this for 15 minutes. The family's mode of transportation is a horse, and the father is not often in their house. Since polygamy is legal here, a man can have up to 4 wives. And the house itself is quite different, with everything open. Notice the amount of sand. Since they are in the Sahel region, there are many sandstorms here, and not only the streets but also the houses are completely filled with sand.
Muslim people has a toilet which is like this because they like to get in this position to do their things, which I think is way better because you have a better way to do your number two.
Many Muslims so don't like the kind of toilet we have.
Yes.
Because they say many people can sit. So we cannot have contact between the toilet and your body because what you let in the toilet is dirty.
And this makes a lot of sense because the toilet that we use, a lot of people sit in there. So you share this seat with a lot of people that sit there naked. And that's not very hygienic. But this one, you don't really sit anywhere. So it's way more hygienic.
Islam is the largest growing religion in the world. This is because of two things. Firstly, men in Islam can have up to 4 wives. The second thing is they love to reproduce. It's culturally accepted to have as many children as possible, which is very different to Christianity because in places in Europe and in the USA, Brazil, people don't have as many children. Normally they have 1, 2 or 3 on average. So imagine if a man has 5 children with each woman, bonjour, that means 20 children just for that family. That's a lot of children.
This is a great example how they make a lot of children. Only here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children.
Let's break down the 5 main principles of Islam. The first thing is that they only believe in one God, Allah. The second principle is praying 5 times a day. The third is donating to charity and donating to the people in need. The fourth principle is Ramadan. Ramadan is basically a period of time where Muslims don't eat during the daylight hours. So when the sun rises until the sun sets, they fast, they don't eat and they don't drink. So when the sun goes down, they break their fast, normally with dates. The fifth principle is only a once-in-a-lifetime thing, which is they go to Mecca and they complete pilgrimage.
This is really interesting. Behind me, you can see that they're all eating from the same plate and they're eating with their hands. That's really interesting because us, like when, I don't know, these countries like Europe, United States, Brazil, we never use the hands. We only use like forks and knives. But they think that using fork and knife is not hygienic, and they think that use their hands is hygienic. That's because no one eats with your hands, only you eat with your hands. And when you use forks and knives, a lot of people eat with a fork and a knife. So that's not hygienic. So that makes a lot of sense actually. As you can see, they're all eating with the right hand. And that's because they use the right hand to eat because they say that's the clear hand. And the left hand is the hand to put on the dirty things, like to clean your ass.
Yes, I'm telling you, this place makes you unfold your mind. This family's mother was always smiling. It had been a long time since I saw someone smile so freely. Happiness, peace, well-being, everything we seek in our lives, she already had. She's fine, she's happy, she has her loved ones around her, and that's everything. Nearby, there is also a safari where we can see various animals like giraffes, monkeys, and many others.
It's interesting to go to a safari and study about these animals because there are some really interesting facts, like the giraffe. The giraffe has a blue color on their tongue. That's because they use their tongue a lot to eat, and their tongue is usually outside the mouth. And because they're exposed to the sunlight, they have the blue color to have the protection from the sun. Another interesting fact is that lions, they sleep a lot during the day. They sleep between 15 and 20 hours every day. And that's because they need to save a lot of energy to go and hunt. This tree is called baba. And this tree is really typical here from Senegal. This tree represents longevity, a long life, because this one can go for long years, like over 1,000 years. And they have a lot of stories around this tree because of everything that it represents. One of the cultural traditions is that they were saying that if you don't work with the land, so you can't be buried in the land. So one of the people here in Senegal, they used to spiritually open this tree and put all the corpses in this tree. As you can see, some of the skulls here of real people following this tradition here and over there too, all around this tree, everywhere there is a hole inside the tree. Senegalese people are very spiritual people and they really practice all these spiritual things.
Have you seen how different this place is? People here also live day by day with spirits. I know this is kind of strange because many people don't believe in that. And myself, I am very skeptical. But Carlinhos and Deborah told me some crazy stories that I better not mention in here. In just a few days, this place has already taught me a lot. Carlinhos, Senegal and Deborah lived here for 8 years. Carlinhos spent a long time living in this room in the middle of nowhere. Not very comfortable, but for an incredible purpose, to build a school for children.
Eu sou brasileiro de Recife, minha mulher era bancária, eu era empresário e a gente largou tudo lá e veio aqui para Senegal para desenvolver um projeto na área da educação com os nossos 2 filhos e a gente morou 8 anos aqui e a gente construiu essa escola que vocês estão vendo, que atende hoje mais de 100 crianças, mas vai atender 400 crianças e hoje a gente está aqui mostrando para vocês, porque aqui, segundo a Secretaria de Educação, é o lugar que mais precisava de escolas e a gente acredita muito na educação, a educação transforma, é isso que a gente está fazendo aqui no Senegal.
Cara, muito bonito, muito impactante, muito inspirador, ainda mais vindo de brasileiro.
It's amazing to see that there are Brazilians around the world doing good things and show how important education is. Carlinhos arrived here years ago with not a lot of money and not knowing the language. He built this school and now this school accommodates up to 100 children and that helps a lot of families here in the region. That's very, very cool to see people doing good things out there. Senegal was truly the most different country I have ever visited. I learned a lot here from people even without speaking the language. Just watching people was enough to see that the way they live is very different and they get along just fine. That's why it's so important to travel the world. You learn from the school of life. Everyone lives in different ways. Thank you Carlinhos and Deborah to show me this amazing place and thank you Senegal for teaching me a lot. I hope you learned something new in this video that can be useful for your life. And that was Senegal, and I will see you in the next place.